Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I get what you're saying, Andrea. I think you're right. I myself have had a similar thing where I'm not so interested these days in the typical debate format, i.e.
You
the kind
host
of
a
point
show
scoring
where they
format.
do
I
that.
I know I do, but I prefer to use the word conversation. I rarely actually use the word debate
Okay.
to
Okay.
talk about the shows I do these days, because a debate is much more that classic sort of I'm defending this point, I'm defending this point. You both get 20 minutes, and then there'll be rebuttals and then counter rebuttals and whatever. And that's a very sort of stylized way of doing something, and it's really a way that is plays to a certain type of debate scenario, point scoring scenario. What I think, and generally, I found even in the public sphere, those kinds of formal debates have gone out of fashion a bit. People are much more doing what I've been doing on the show for a long time now, which is that more kind of informal, conversational kind of thing, which is kind of how those Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson conversations ended up, didn't they, when they went on
Maybe
stage?
I just call them debates because I'm on the higher in the agreeableness spectrum.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
I'm
mean, there's
just like,
still
oh,
debates. There's still a
yeah.
point that's being debated, but it's done in a more conversational manner. And I think, but the way that happens does depend so much on the individuals, the characters. And so if you get two people who you know are going to be like this, butting up against each other, you're going to have one kind of an interaction, and it's going to be quite black and white probably. What I think is more interesting sometimes is when you get the people who are kind of actually a bit more closer together. There's a bit of overlap between their thinking, but they're not fully on board with each other's position. And then you get these more nuanced ones. You get a little bit more gray areas. You get a bit more of a human conversation, because most of us don't go into conversations knowing exactly what we believe about everything and being able to defend it down to the last point. We're usually kind of still thinking things through and trying to come up with ourselves exactly how we think about these issues. And I quite like that when that happens on a show. So, for instance, a good recent one might be, I did a Big Conversation episode. So the Big Conversation is an unbelievable show, but it's one that we do in partnership with the John Templeton Foundation.
Okay.
And I had N.T. Wright, who's a well-known British theologian and thinker, with Douglas Murray, who's quite a well-known cultural critic here in the UK and the world now. And Douglas Murray is what he would call a Christian atheist. So he was a Christian at one time. He lost his faith, but he very much values and sees the value of Christianity. He's quite in a Jordan Peterson mold in many ways. And obviously Tom Wright is a committed Christian. But there was it wasn't your kind of new atheist versus fundamentalist Christian kind of dialogue. It was much more interesting and nuanced than that, because there was a meeting of minds. There was a lot that they agreed on, but there was this issue of, but is it really true? And for me, that kind of discussion is often much more interesting, because you're not just rehearsing the same old type debate sometimes, about does God exist. It's much more something that's personal. There was a lot of personal stories shared. You got a sense of who they were and why this stuff mattered. So I like that. I like when there's a kind of a meeting of minds, but there's still an issue to be debated. And I guess we do the whole range of those things on the show over the years,